November 1st, 1755. A city of 275,000 people went to sleep thinking God was on their side. By breakfast, they'd lost that argument. Standard story is simple. An earthquake struck Lisbon. A terrible natural disaster. God's judgment, some said. The city burned, the sea rose, thousands died, case closed. But that framing, the one you'll find in most history books, misses what actually happened and why it mattered. Because Lisbon didn't just fall to geology. It fell to a series of choices made by men in power under impossible pressure, with incomplete information. And those choices cost more than lives. They cost Europe's faith in the old order. Let's start with what everyone agrees on. At 9:40 a.m. on All Saints' Day, the ground moved. Hard. The shock lasted between 4 and 6 minutes, time enough to collapse stone buildings, shatter bell towers, and kill an estimated 60,000 people in Lisbon alone. Aftershocks followed. Then fire spread through the wreckage. By evening, 3/4 of the city's buildings were rubble or ash. Within hours, the Tagus River flooded the lower city. Survivors crowded into open squares, terrified. The king, José I, fled to the countryside. His chief minister, the Marquês de Pombal, stayed behind. Here's where the accepted narrative breaks down. Most accounts treat Pombal as a hero, a rational, decisive leader who rebuilt Lisbon from nothing. That's partially true, but it obscures a harder reality. Pombal made calculated choices about who would be saved and who wouldn't. He ordered the construction of temporary wooden shelters in geometric grids. Efficient. Cold. Thousands of poor residents who'd lost homes got nothing. He also hanged looters and executed priests who preached that the earthquake was divine punishment. Not mercy, control. The flood is the detail that changes everything. When the sea rose, it didn't just destroy docks and warehouses. It swallowed the lower city, the commercial heart. Merchants lost inventories worth millions of cruzados, gold, spices, silks, sugar from Brazil. Overnight, Portugal's wealth moved from liquid assets to rubble. That's not metaphorical. The kingdom's tax base collapsed. Its capacity to fund the navy, to maintain colonial trade routes, to compete with Britain and France, all of it hinged on Lisbon's port. Pombal understood this immediately. So Pombal made a decision. He would rebuild Lisbon not as it was, but as a rational, defensible commercial machine. Wider streets harder to burn. Lower buildings faster to construct and cheaper. A grid layout easier to tax and police. He recruited engineers, architects, mathematicians. He issued decrees before the ash settled. Work crews began clearing rubble within weeks. No democratic process. No consultation, just orders. And they worked. But here's the cost, the number that matters. Pombal's reconstruction program displaced roughly 50,000 people. The poor lost not just homes, but neighborhoods, networks, livelihoods. Artisans whose workshops were in the lower city couldn't afford the new rents. Widows lost property to the crown. The king rewarded nobles with prime real estate in the new districts. Wealth consolidated upward. The city was rebuilt, yes, but not for the people who'd lived there. The real explanation for why Lisbon mattered to Europe isn't that it fell. It's that the way it fell exposed a crack in the European worldview. The Enlightenment was in full swing. Reason, progress, rational order, these were the new gods. Then God himself, or nature, or whatever you called the force that moved the earth, demolished one of Europe's richest cities in 6 minutes. Philosophers couldn't ignore it. Voltaire wrote about it. Rousseau debated it. Kant used it as proof of something. The earthquake became intellectual currency. But the deeper shift wasn't philosophical. It was political. Pombal's success in rebuilding, in imposing order through sheer force of will, proved something to other European rulers. That absolute authority, applied ruthlessly and rationally, could reshape reality. He didn't ask permission. He didn't compromise. He rebuilt a city and consolidated power simultaneously. Within a decade, he was effectively running Portugal. The earthquake had made him indispensable. This is where the treasure angle comes in, and it's real. Pombal's reconstruction required staggering amounts of capital. He issued bonds. He negotiated loans. He redirected colonial revenue. Some of that gold came from Brazil, some from seizures of property, some from the crown's own reserves. The numbers were enormous. Estimates suggest the total cost ran into tens of millions of cruzados. Much of it is traceable through historical records, but some isn't. Some of those fortunes disappeared into private hands, administrators, nobles, contractors. The records are fragmentary. Archaeologists and historians have recovered fragments of this story. Documents exist in Portuguese archives. Some buildings from the Pombal era survive. But the full accounting, where every cruzado went, which contractors profited most, what was actually lost in the earthquake versus what was hidden during the chaos, that's still incomplete. The earthquake destroyed records. Fires consumed tax documents. Flooding erased merchant ledgers. Intentionally or not, the disaster created perfect cover for financial obscurity. The broader impact on Europe was seismic, pun intended. Other rulers watched Pombal's move. Frederick the Great took notes. Catherine the Great saw it. The idea that a disaster could be weaponized, that chaos could be converted into opportunity for consolidation of power, became a template. After Lisbon, absolutism didn't retreat. It adapted. It became more rational, more bureaucratic, more ruthless. The earthquake also shattered something else, the idea that Europe was stable. Lisbon was wealthy, Christian, civilized by Enlightenment standards, and it could still be erased. That fear rippled through European capitals. It drove investment in science, better understanding of geology, better building codes, better disaster preparedness. But it also drove paranoia. If God or nature could do this, what else could happen? What other systems might fail? Portugal itself never fully recovered. The earthquake weakened the kingdom at precisely the moment when Britain was ascending. Trade shifted. Colonial power dynamics changed. By the end of the 18th century, Portugal was a secondary power, dependent on British protection. Pombal's brilliant reconstruction bought time but couldn't stop the underlying decline. The city he rebuilt was beautiful, it still is. But it was built on a foundation of displaced people and hidden wealth. So when you look at Lisbon today, the Baixa district with its geometric streets, its low buildings, its rational grid, you're not looking at a city rebuilt by nature or even by accident. You're looking at a power move. A man saw an opportunity in catastrophe and seized it. He made calculations. He counted costs in human displacement and concentrated wealth. And he won. That's the real story the sea doesn't tell. The mystery that remains isn't whether the earthquake happened. It did. The mystery is how much wealth actually vanished in those first weeks, how much was lost to the disaster, how much was deliberately hidden, and how much survives in documents we haven't yet found. Archives are still being digitized. New records surface occasionally. The full accounting of Pombal's reconstruction, the money, the power, the displacement, may never be complete, but every fragment we recover rewrites how we understand that moment. Because Lisbon teaches us something crucial. Disasters don't just destroy, they reorganize. They create windows where power can be consolidated, where fortunes can be made, where entire populations can be remade. Pombal understood that. He made his move under pressure with incomplete information, and he changed the trajectory of European politics. That's not a natural disaster story. That's a story about decisions made by men who saw opportunity in catastrophe and had the power to seize it. Subscribe. Every week we uncover the decisions hidden beneath history's disasters, the treasures lost to power plays, and the records that still haven't been found.